Okay, this is Caxi's Baltimore replay analysis. Looking at the matchup, they have a fishing division on their team. Oof, that's going to be a little bit rough. Actually, one could even say that our division's kind of a fishing division because we have Tai-Ho and two supposed AA ships. But I mean, it's not really because Caxi, I know your Baltimore isn't really AA spec, and my Fletcher certainly isn't AA spec. Um, but I do comment in the chat. Oh my goodness, fishing versus fishing division. So this should be fun.
Let's give them a hard time.
This wasn't a CV game. The first thing I would probably do would be to, well, this kind of feels weird to say, would be to ask myself, for smoke. Like smoke right outside of A cap, and then use radar to support the cap, which I mean is a risky play, but it's something I like to do. It's high risk, high reward. That usually goes against my normal playstyle, but I feel like I get a lot more reward than risk when I do this maneuver. But since it is a CV game, it's super easy to get screwed by planes when you're trying to leave the smoke and stealth up, because the planes can just spot you. So you are doing the right thing by trying to get closer to the islands. So, for example, if they make a battleship push, you can use the islands to try to halt it without being super exposed, which is a good move.
Reporting the position.
For that first shot against the Grozovoy, I personally would have waited a little bit longer for him to turn, to make sure, you know, he's fully committing to that turn. And then I would have definitely given more lead. You're under-leading pretty heavily with those last two salvos. Your elevation is good, but I think your horizontal direction predicting could use just a little bit of brushing up. What you're doing right now is a tad risky. It's very important to kill that Grozovoy, but you don't really know where their BBs are. There could be a stealth Iowa, you know, 11 kilometers away, just waiting for you to, just waiting to nuke you as soon as you turn broadside.
Roger. Concentrate fire on the enemy warship.
So I'd definitely be slowing down and pointing more nose in until I got stealth and then turned out. But luckily there wasn't a stealth Iowa 11 kilometers away, so you're completely fine. Again, that's just something a little extra I like to do to make sure that I'm safe. Whenever there's uncertainty, I always try to take the safer route. That one could have used a little bit more predictive aiming. These shots look... you had the right idea, because it kind of looked like he was turning right, but he didn't really. That's really not your fault. The first shots could definitely have used a little bit more predictive aiming. Because you know as soon as that destroyer is spotted, he's not going to go straight, right? He's definitely going to turn out in that situation. So you aim high and give a little bit less lead. Um, just to catch him during the turnout. Okay, your decision to turn out here was a little bit questionable, because there's a lot of battleships that have line of sight to their Neptune. So, an arguably a riskier but arguably better play would have been to go closer to the island before turning out, making sure you're definitely within radar range of that Neptune, and then just radaring him. And he'd be lit for 40 seconds against all the battleships that are looking at him. He might not be broadside, but Neptunes still take incredible amounts of damage through the front. So that's definitely what I would have done. Especially since you know all their basically big hitters, all your Citadel threats, are in one direction, which is, you know, towards the southeastern part of the map. So you don't have to worry about getting Citadeled from the southwestern part of the map when you're doing that radar maneuver. That was definitely a bit of a missed opportunity, one that I probably personally would have taken, even though it was a little bit riskier.
Fire on the designated target. Roger. Concentrate fire on the enemy warship. All stations, reporting the position of a strategic target. Acknowledged.
So what you're doing right now is actually pretty smart. Even though it seems like, oh, he's just running away, you really don't want to engage a blob of, you know, high-tier battleships. That's no good.
Torpedoes to starboard.
You want to engage them on more favorable terms.
Provide anti-aircraft fire support. Provide anti-aircraft fire support. Torpedoes to starboard.
Yeah, I'm actually not really quite sure how those torps missed me, but they did, so yay me, right?
All stations, reporting the position of a strategic
From my point of view, it looked like the torps went slightly behind me.
aircraft fire support.
But I myself was pretty surprised I didn't get hit. Yeah, I wouldn't pull the trigger right around here if I were you. That would be a not smart move. I'm gonna switch over to free cam. What I would do right now is switch to AP, turn most of the way out, and you can Citadel that Des Moines right here. I see that's what you're doing, so that's good.
Fire on the designated target. Set a smoke screen. Enemy cruiser detected. Negative.
Shot placement definitely could have been better in that case.
The ship is on fire. Thank you.
Okay, let's see what you do next.
Problem solved, sir.
Oh, that was some nice RNG. You're doing what I would have done in this situation. But between salvos, you should be... Here, I'm gonna zoom out the camera again. There's an Iowa over there. You should be looking at him in between salvos and seeing where he's firing. Luckily, he's not firing towards you. But if you see shells coming your way, then you gotta hit the brakes and turn in, or else you risk just getting deleted. So, even though that Iowa is far away, he could definitely slam you, because you're mostly broadside him. You just gotta be aware about these kinds of things. Always be paying attention to where the Citadel threat is.
Problem solved, sir.
If you're gonna use the island to fire against the FDG, I'd recommend nose angled toward the other way, and I think that may have been the Iowa. I'm not too sure, but luckily he missed you. But I would definitely recommend against the use of Island Waifu in this case. I would go over there. See that friendly smokescreen made by the Shimakaze? I would try to utilize that. And again, that was pretty lucky because that could have very easily been a deletion. And oh boy, you are very, very lucky you do not get punished for this. If the FDG had been looking in your direction, you'd be dead. Completely, 100% toast. That was not a particularly good use of the island. And again, I would have definitely not gone this way, right? You want to split the battleship's attention, right? The GK is focusing on your team over here, as are all the other battleships. If you go and flank them from that direction, from the C direction, you can basically get free shots without any risk of getting return fire, right?
Fire on the designated target.
And if things get too hot, you just use the islands, right? And you stealth up. Wait for them to drop your attention, and then rinse repeat. And if you push up further towards the seaside, you'd be in range of the other battleships that are pushing in, like that Iowa pushing in. If you were from that island, say, where are you on, like, crap, the free camera is a little bit hard to use because it just wants to point to where you're aiming. Like you were utilizing the island around that area, you could be getting easy shots on that Iowa as he's pushing in, and just DPM him down the whole way. If things get too hot, you just reverse right back around the island, or just stealth up.
Fire on the designated target.
Same thing goes for the GK and the Izumo. This is risky business right here. Spending that much time broadside to that many battleships whose reloads you are probably not counting is just inherently risky business. Luckily, there is a lot of other things that the battleship seem to be wanting to shoot at, so you're not getting mauled. But sometimes in these certain kinds of, or a situation that would look really similar to this, could be really, really, really easy for you to lose a lot of hit points really, really quickly. And again, all their battleships are attempting a kind of push because we have cap pressure on them. So if you're at those islands, um,
All stations requesting
probably right around, just maybe not as far as the St. Louis, um, but kind of maybe closer to the small one in the middle, you could have basically, not necessarily 100% free, but you'd be splitting their attention and you'd be able to get in a lot of free damage. I don't think our St. Louis actually brings Def A. I think he brings Hydro, so he just gets murdered by their Taiho. But if you had been there, you could have given him AA support. You might have even been able to go after the Taiho, possibly. Again, that also was not particularly the smartest move. Turning out when spotted. Um, I don't know why that GK was firing high explosive, but if you had AP loaded, he was a smart player, and he was waiting, you'd been in a lot of trouble.
concentrate fire on the designated target.
Again, if the GK had a brain, you'd be in a lot of trouble. Props to you for focusing the Neptune, by the way. High priority target. Good stuff. So we win this, even though I'm pretty sure if this continued, we would have lost because we had fairly equal ships, but the ships remaining on their team were fairly healthy. Um, and also our carrier was completely out of fighters, while their carrier had still had his triple set of torpedo bomber squadrons, and he could have just been wiping ships out at will. So I'm really glad it ended where it did. I'm really glad he didn't die. Even though a lot of times I'm just looking at what you're doing, I'm just like, oh, yeah, that's probably not the smartest, or that's a lot of risk for very, very little reward. Just that pathing in general. I think the biggest reason you didn't, I guess, quote unquote, have as much influence on the match is I think you played too safe. First of all, that radar against the Neptune could have had a huge impact on how the game went, and it actually wouldn't have been very risky at all because you knew where all the Citadel threats were, right? You knew there wasn't a battleship on the side of the map that could Citadel you from behind the island, so it should have been kind of a no-brainer to go after the Neptune. Just get within the radar range, and then radar him. You don't even have to shoot, and then RBBs could have finished the job. Their Neptune, I recall in that match, ended up shooting down almost 40 of our carriers' planes, a lot of them being his fighters, leading to him completely losing the air war, and their carrier almost having free reign. So that could have been incredibly important. Another thing that you didn't do is take that flanking route. You kind of just played the island game, but that wasn't playing the island game very smartly. Again, a lot of risk. Like you were exposing yourself broadside stop to in Iowa. Granted, he was far away, 18, 19 kilometers, but one good salvo and boom, deleted instantly. Also, the island wasn't really helping you too much. You were broadside to a fully loaded GK for a solid 10-15 seconds. Broadside and stopped at that. If he had a brain or AP loaded or was just paying a little bit more attention to the map, that could have ended really, really, really poorly for you. What you should have done is use your stealth, use your concealment to get around the map, push up through C, and then split their attention. So you have yourself and the St. Louis shooting them from the side, and the rest of the team shooting them from the front. That puts a lot of pressure on the enemy battleships. Even that much pressure, having enemies shooting them from two directions, really, really screws with their aims. Their salvos probably wouldn't have been too accurate on you. You can always bail out because of the numerous islands, and you could also have given defensive AA support to our St. Louis. So yeah, those are kind of the two main points. Not going after the Neptune at first, just with the radar, and secondly, not taking the flanking route. The key to flanking successfully is knowing how to do it safely. And I guess you may not have that much experience in the department, but on opportunities like that, you should definitely be taking them. Definitely a lot more possibility for reward as compared to the risk. So, yeah, that's basically about it. Also, definitely work on your aiming a little bit. There's a lot of sloppy aiming. Against the DD, you fired way too early before you saw him commit to the turn. He did end up committing to the turn, but you also drastically underled him several times. First salvo on the Grozavoy should have been probably 3-4,000 easy, and that would have saved a lot of chasing and a lot of possible risks for both me, because I had to chase him down as a Fletcher, and also you because you were trying to chase him down. Against the GKs, a lot of splashing against things that aren't superstructure. For a GK, it's so predictable, it's so big. You should be landing, at least 3 to 4 at the very minimum. Granted, you just have horrible RNG. You should be landing at minimum 3 to 4 HE hits on that superstructure every single salvo. Every single one where you splash hull or, goes over the top or too low or something, that's wasted DPM. You really, really gotta I guess, tighten that up, so to speak. And a lot of that comes with practice. Overall, I think he did fairly well for, I guess, Mountain Range is a very, very tough map to play on a cruiser, especially a cruiser like the Baltimore. The fact that you kept yourself alive while doing, I guess, decent damage output definitely may have tipped the scales in our favor for the win. So, yep.